Hello there, you're watching the Press Preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what is making the headlines with the Liverpool Echo's political editor Liam Thorpe and the former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. They will be with me from now until just before midnight, so let's see what is on some of those front pages. The air traffic control outage is the top story in the Telegraph, which says the knock-on effect could be days of delays. Same lead for The Sun, with the headline, Air We Go Again. The Guardian leads on the co-founder of Palestine Action, who's won the right to challenge the group's banning in court. The Times leads with a legal warning for Prime Minister Keir Starmer over his plan to recognise the state of Palestine, while the Mail talks to freed British-Israeli hostages, furious at the PM's plan. The Eye reports that the UK is planning to get more aid into war-ravaged Gaza by joining forces with global leaders to put more pressure on Israel. While the Daily Express leads on possible new clues to find the body of the last victim of the Moors murderers contained in a book written by Ian Brady in prison. The FT leads with America's central bank, the Federal Reserve, refusing to lower interest rates despite repeated pressure from Donald Trump. Sharon Osbourne is on the front of the Metro as tens of thousands of fans line the streets of Birmingham for the funeral of her rock legend husband, Ozzy. Similar images in the Star with the headline Sharon's Tears, while the Mirror calls it Sign of Love, the day Ozzy went home. So welcome to Liam and Anita. Let's begin with the chaos, Anita, caused today. Perhaps not as bad as it was 2 years ago, but twice in 2 years is not a great look for air traffic control.
Absolutely, and I think that the fury from airlines has been pretty apparent, not just in the kind of slightly predictable barbs from Ryanair, but also even the fact that British Airways are saying, well, it's a radar issue, so the buck stops with them. And so we are expecting to be a reasonable amount of chaos. And although the breakdown was kind of fixed within an hour, the knock-on implications for this are pretty severe, especially at a time of year when everyone is leaving the country. So I imagine there's going to continue to be really tough questions asked, and I think there's been calls for resignations as a result to really try to unpack what's gone wrong, because I think many of us, when we hear about these incidents, assume either a cyber attack or something of that nature, but that has apparently been ruled out. So, I mean, I think there's still some questions for the NAT's chief exec, Martin Rolfe, to answer.
Yes, especially at this time. The last one was in August. This is we're just heading into August. School summer holidays are underway, and people have been sat on those planes today with their kids wondering what's going on. In fact, one captain was heard to say over the tannoy, I think they've just switched the system on and off again to sort of reboot it, to laughter from the passengers. But they're probably also thinking, really?
Yeah. As the dad of a near 2-year-old who's considering, attempting a flight with him at some point, it's the absolute worst case scenario to be sat on the flight, on the tarmac for hours. It's hot as well, and it's the worst possible time. People have been working so hard, desperate to get away, go on holiday, and then just find themselves caught up in this chaos. And for it to have happened, obviously, just 2 years ago, and we know that at that point, I think there was 700,000 flights where people were disrupted. Yeah. So there do need to be questions asked, and it's got a political edge to this. Ed Davey, Liberal Democrat leader, has called for an inquiry. He says it's utterly unacceptable that after major disruption just 2 years ago, air traffic control has once again been hit by a technical fault. And I think Anita quoted a BA source that's spoken to the Telegraph and said the book stops with NAT. So a lot of pressure on Martin Rolfe. I think we can all expect Ryanair, never not outspoken on these issues. They've come in with a big kicking and said that he should resign. So yeah, he's under real pressure tonight.
And I think the thing that's really striking is that some passengers might not be eligible for compensation, because often that's because of airline faults where airlines have to compensate. So I think we might encounter some very furious passengers in the coming days.
Just looking at the latest details on the effects today, 84 departures were cancelled so far. The day hasn't finished across all UK airports. That equates to 3% of departures. There's also been a total of 71 arrivals cancelled as well. And that's important, Liam, isn't it? Because the last time this happened, other countries were saying, what's going on in the UK? Why is this causing a problem? Why are we sitting here in the States or in Spain or anywhere else waiting to go in there because there's a technical problem.
It affects your reputation on the international stage as well. I think it's also important to point out that whilst things are starting to get back to normal, many of the aircraft and crew have had to land in different places. So they're going to have to get back to where they need to be. So people could be delayed for days, and the knock-on effect on the economy. This is a massive time for this industry. And as you say, for international people who are looking on at Britain, probably questioning some other things going on in Britain at the moment, and they're wondering what's going on. Why can't we get our house in order on something that should be a pretty simple part of society now?
It does make people nervous, doesn't it? Look, I know plenty of people watching may well be afraid of flying, they're not fans of it, but we've had the Air India crash, we've had other situations recently, now this, not to mention the not always pleasant experience of trying to move through our airports at the peak summer season. And it's going to make people think twice. I know you said you're not taking your 2-year-old yet. The day will come at some point, and it's not
considering
easy.
it.
But seriously, people will think twice.
You're taking them to Haven instead.
Yeah. I think we go to Butlins.
Staycation's back on the agenda.
Yeah. North Wales, that's very nice.
No, I mean, well, the weather's gorgeous in London. Maybe in the UK, maybe for terrible reasons, but it's certainly warm enough to now holiday. But I think you're right about the reputation as well, because we are in a situation with Heathrow. I'm probably going to say, there should be a third runway, where because of the number of flights that take off every couple of minutes, when you have a delay, even of this nature, it may not last for longer than a couple of hours. The implications and the disruption,
the knock-on effect,
is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think people don't quite appreciate that, and that puts a lot of pressure on our natural and national infrastructure.
Liam, let's switch attention to the front page of the Eye. Attempts to get UK aid into Gaza, and Starmer's warning to Israel as well.
Yeah, so obviously this follows yesterday's very significant news that Keir Starmer wants to recognise the Palestinian state, which is, a major shift in foreign policy that we've seen in recent years. The Eye has followed this up today to say that he's now lobbying global leaders to pressurise Netanyahu into allowing hundreds of aid trucks into Gaza. We are seeing, we're seeing the horrific scenes of what the UN and the World Health Organization are saying is representing a famine of children starving. It is absolutely appalling to see every day, and I feel like a lot of people, I just feel very sort of powerless when seeing these images come through. Keir Starmer has been accused by many people of being quite slow to act on this, and obviously some of his earlier comments around this conflict have been hugely controversial, but now he has really changed tone, and both him and David Lammy putting a lot of pressure on the Netanyahu government.
Or trying to.
Well, whether that's
listening?
That's kind of the point, isn't it? Do they listen? Do they care? They obviously listen, because you saw Netanyahu's response, which was pretty fiery, but whether it has any impact, and obviously we can discuss this later, but whether the actual conditional threat has any impact, it's hard to know, and it's hard to know whether the UK influence is large in that area. I'm not sure, to be honest, but one thing we do know, and everyone knows, is that it's absolutely essential that enormous amounts of aid are allowed in to Gaza, because people are starving, children are starving. More figures today about children and people dying of malnutrition, and this is only going to get worse and worse unless huge volumes of aid are allowed in.
Anita, the Times main headline is Palestine vow breaks law, claim top lawyers. What they're referring to here is a letter, they say, signed by 40 peers, sends a warning to PM. It's been sent to Lord Hermer, who's the Attorney General. Tell us more.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. So it's kind of thoughtful and lawyerly, including people like Lord Pannick, who's kind of a preeminent, one of the most respected lawyers who represents the government in a Supreme Court battle over Rwanda, which is how he sort of became first quite famous. So effectively, it's a bit technical. There's a treaty in 1933 which says, here are the criteria that you need to say that a country is a state, and it needs to have a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and a capacity to enter into relationships with other states. And they say, on most of those measures, it's quite clear that Palestine would not be recognised as a state.
Yes.
And that you get into weird complications when you are, at the moment, describing people in the West Bank and Gaza as refugees. But if you're saying they're a state, they're technically just in their home. So it's more of a legal debate saying, well, you shouldn't have confusion in the international law. And in fact, you're using statehood as a political tool rather than complying with the technical rules around statehood.
But it's a lever they're trying to pull,
exactly.
nonetheless.
I mean, effectively, I feel like the lawyers are kind of missing the point, which is, yes, everyone knows that. He is using it as a way to apply pressure and to indicate some changing of UK support, given what's happening in Israel, that we can't really, imagine, really. It's horrific.
The Montevideo Convention, which was signed way back in 1933. Thanks both for the moment. Coming up, the Health Secretary comes out fighting over the prospect of more doctors' strikes. We'll discuss that story next.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live. I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Turkey is burying its dead. Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets. Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview here on Sky News. With me in the studio, Liam Thorpe and Anita Boateng. And let's get back to the papers, shall we? Guardian front page, Liam, we've discussed, well, Palestine Action wins right to fight ban in court as their main headline. But also, underneath it, striking BMA, British Medical Association, will lose the pay war, says Wes Street. And the Health Secretary really digging in his fight with resident doctors.
Yeah, I think this is the sort of strongest language we've seen from the Health Secretary. He says the doctors' union will lose a war with this government. To even put it in those terms is quite incendiary, I guess. It's taking things up a notch. We've just seen the end of the first round of 5 days of strikes from the resident doctors, which were formerly junior doctors.
Yeah.
And their argument is that despite some pay rises that were awarded, if you remember when the Labour government first came in, they settled loads of strike disputes, and they got quite a lot of praise for that. But their view on it, the resident doctors, was that it would be part of a process towards restoring their pay from 2008, which they said is about a 25% loss. There are obviously very competing views from the government side and the BMA side. There's a bit of a row about how pay and pay changes are being calculated. One side chooses to use RPI, one side chooses CPI. But ultimately, we're at a situation where it's not looking good between the two sides. We thought that some of the language had softened, but this language tonight from Wes Streeting suggests that the government is absolutely not budging on this, so we could see more strikes. Just to say as well that from the doctor's side, their argument is it's not just about pay, it's about the kind of conditions that they're working in, about being sent on rotation to other parts of the country at the drop of a hat, about not being able to afford to kind of live properly, long weekend working and things like that. And I've been out on to interview some of these guys on the picket line, and I do believe that they're absolutely dedicated people who are obviously very keen to do their job and to invite more people into their industry because it's necessary. But many of them are now leaving. One I spoke to the other day, quite a few people going to places like Australia and New Zealand because they just don't think they can do the job like this in the country anymore.
Although a lot of people look at it and say, well, my wages aren't what they were in 2008 either. We're in a different era.
And they see the numbers, and I think if you do look at public polling, the BMA has noticed that it started to shift away from them compared to when it was, say, 2 years ago.
A lot of papers, Anita, feature pictures of what happened today in Birmingham. The Daily Star, Prince of Sadness, they have there, and Sharon's tears for her Ozzy, the main headline there. It's just sad to see, isn't it? For all the outpouring of love towards Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath and the thousands on the streets of Birmingham, it's the family most affected, and everybody knows how close Sharon and Ozzy were and the children there flanking her in Birmingham.
Yes, and I think it's a salutary reminder that all these kind of icons and huge cultural figures are also, fathers and husbands, and that this loss is felt very differently and very personally. And I think in some ways, I'm always very moved when this happens, that the family decide to have a kind of public moment, because actually, in some ways, the Ozzy that we probably knew and encountered is very different to the person that they are mourning. And, all of this sort of can sometimes be incredibly difficult to manage. And I think when you see, Sharon Osbourne just in the pictures and in the footage from earlier that we've all seen on Sky and other programmes, it's really just clear that she is in anguish. And that is, sometimes some of the chanting and stuff feels quite incongruous given the sombrerity of the moment. But it's been great to see Birmingham embrace the King once more and to really celebrate what he's done for Birmingham and for music.
Oh, 100%. He was groundbreaking with Black Sabbath, wasn't he, in terms of inventing metal, if you like. Look, let's end on a slightly lighter note for this bit and go inside tomorrow's Metro. Gen Z, they say, lots of Zs in that one, prefer gym and early nights to going out. And Liam, I hate to say it, but I think Anita's the example of this in the studio. Gen Z are opting to tone their abs instead of going on the Raz, says the Metro. I'm not sure that they even know what going on the Raz means. Nearly 3/4 of 18 to 28-year-olds have skipped a night out to make sure they're fresh for a workout the next morning, shows a survey. Anita, is that your existence? Is that what you do?
I think this is a sign of people that have very much got their heads screwed on. I think that they and I are going to live forever. I genuinely think, that piece doesn't feel surprising to me at all. And I think that, occasionally skipping a night out or going home a bit early just to make sure you can be fresh in the morning is not a bad thing at all. The thing that saddens me is that they're all sort of homebodies. I do think there is a bit of a thing around social isolation and younger people not kind of putting themselves out there and getting out of their comfort zones. I don't think you need to be on the Raz completely drunk to be engaging and socialising and doing all the rest of it.
I don't understand any of these words, I've got to say. The only six-pack I've ever had is a six-pack of IPA. And I do see some of the younger people in my office seeming to be living much cleaner, healthier lives, and I'm very happy for them. But I just think you need a few pints down the pub after work sometimes.
As the Metro says, you prefer Sambuca to a kombucha then?
I definitely do. I definitely do.
Good. Not going to ask if it's a flaming one. OK, let's take a look at the weather now.
breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
There'll be showers over the next couple of days, some heavy and thundery and more general rain next week, but Saturday looks mostly fine. Southern parts will have a warm start tomorrow, but there'll be some heavy showers too. Northern parts can expect a scattering of showers as well, possibly heavy in the northeast, but most other places look fairly fine. Showers will develop much more widely through the morning, heavy and thundery in parts of the south, but they'll become fairly isolated in the north later on. Some disruption is likely over southern England. It'll be quite warm, although a bit cooler than today, and humid in the south as well.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Up next on Sky News at 11, disruption for airline passengers across the UK after outbound flights were grounded during the summer holiday getaway because of an air traffic control issue. More on that after the break.